workshop in Celtic on Friday, I indicated that there might be some amendments coming where they favorably disposed of those, and they said they would have a look at them. But I suspect we will hear people speaking to these at law amendments. So without comments, Mr. Speaker, I move second reading of Bill number 9.
Motion is for second reading of Bill number 9. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 9, Title and Act, amend Chapter 300 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Municipal Elections Act, Chapter 18 of the Acts of 1998, the Municipal Government Act, and Chapter 302 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Municipal Grants Act.
This bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, would you please call the order of business private members' public bills for second reading?
Private members' local bills?
Private members' public bills.
Private members' public bills for second reading.
Second reading. Yes, Mr. Speaker, would you please call Bill number 53, the Massage Therapy Act? Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the honourable member for Queens, I move second reading of Bill number 53.
Motion is for second reading of Bill number 53. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried.
Yeah.
53.
Bill 53, entitled an act respecting the practice and regulation of massage therapy.
For this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, would you please call Bill number 32, the Farm Machinery Dealers and Vendors Act?
Bill number 32, the Honourable Minister of Energy.
My pleasure to move Bill number 32.
Motion is for second reading of Bill number 32. Is the House ready for question? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 32, entitled an act to protect the dealers and vendors of farm machinery.
For this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, would you please call private and local bills for second reading?
Private and local bills for second reading.
Mr. Speaker, would you please call Bill number 54?
Bill number 54, the Funeral Service Association of Nova Scotia Act. Now I'm a member for Pictou East.
54. I move second reading.
Motion is for second reading of Bill number 54, Funeral Service Association of Nova Scotia Act. House ready for the question. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 54, entitled an act to amend Chapter 71 of the Acts of 1978, an act to incorporate the Licensed Embalmers and Funeral Directors Association.
For this bill referred to the Committee on Private and Local Bills. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, please call Bill number 55, the Maritime Oddfellows Home Act.
Bill number 55, the Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Mr. Speaker, I move Bill 55 for second reading.
Motion is for second reading of Bill number 55. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 55, entitled an act to amend Chapter 134 of the Acts of 1923, an act to incorporate the Maritime Oddfellows Home.
Or the bill be referred to the Committee on Private and Local Bills. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move you to now leave the chair and the House resolve in the Committee of the whole House on bills.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Would you move? Would you please call? We're moving too fast here, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, would you please call Bill number 50, the Interior Designers Act?
Yes, Bill number 50, the Interior Designers Act. Shall the clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried. The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, would you please call Bill number 3, the Personal Property Security Act?
Yes, Bill number 3, the Personal Property Security Act. Shall the clauses carry? Carried. Shall the title carry? Carried. Shall the bill carry? Carried. The Honorable the Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, would you please, Mr. Chairman, would you please call Bill number 28, the Apprenticeship and Trades Qualifications Act?
Yes, Bill number 28, the Apprenticeship Trades Qualifications Act.
Mr. Speaker, with the consent of the House, I would like to come back to that at a later date.
Is it agreed?
Agreed.
It is agreed. The Honorable the Government House Leader.
Mr. Chairman, would you please call Bill number 43, the Members' Retiring Allowances Act?
Yes, Bill number 43, the Members' Retiring Allowance Act. Shall the clauses carry? Carried. Shall the title carry? Carried. Shall the bill carry? Carried. The Honorable the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Do you, just one moment, is it the will of the House that we continue with the Firefighters Compensation Act, or would you prefer that for a future day? All right. Mr. Chairman, would you please call the Financial Measures Act 2003? What's the bill number? 36.
Bill number 36, the Financial Measures Act 2003.
Yeah.
Shall the clauses carry? No. Clause by clause? Okay. We'll do those on block, honorable members. One through, shall clauses 1 through and including 13 carry? Carry. Shall clause 14 carry? The Honorable the Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we are now looking at Bill 36, the Financial Measures Act, and I'd like to take an opportunity to speak on Clause 14, which is Part 3 of the Act, the Gaming Control Act. This particular clause in the Act, Section 1 and Section 2 of Clause 14, it essentially is the part of this legislation that's been somewhat controversial in this session, as so often pieces of the Financial Measures Act often are. We've seen as a feature of certainly this government the tendency to bring in, as part of the Financial Measures Act, other measures that aren't necessarily related to the budget. And, Mr. Speaker, this particular clause is the piece that takes away from the municipal government any bylaws that have been made pursuant to the Municipal Government Act that apply to casinos in Nova Scotia. And it essentially says that if the Cabinet, the Governor and Council, determines that the operator of a casino has notified the Nova Scotia Gaming Corporation that under the contract of their operator terminating event has occurred, then it provides the Cabinet with the power to exempt the contract from the municipal legislation. Now, Mr. Speaker, we've had an opportunity in this session to hear from people at Law Amendments on this. And, Mr. Speaker, there was a former worker from Casino Nova Scotia, Andrea Skinner, who would be known to members of this House, who came forward at the Law Amendments Committee and spoke of her particular experience working at the casino. She had been an employee of the casino for more than 6 years. She worked in a Smokeville environment, a very smoky environment. She felt that being exposed to secondhand smoke in that environment contributed to her feeling of unwellness. She had a number of health-related concerns that she sought medical attention for, including nosebleeds and et cetera, Mr. Speaker. And she left her employment, as we all know, at the casino due to her health concerns. And who knows, Mr. Speaker, how many other people working at the casino may have had the same experience. We don't really know. And Mr. Speaker, we also don't know how many workers who work at the casino would very much like the option of being able to leave. But Mr. Speaker, employment isn't that easy to come by in this province. Even in the service sector, some people seem to think that jobs in the service sector are very easy to come by, but that's not the case, Mr. Speaker. Even here in the metro area, where we have better rates of employment than many places, we still have a substantial rate of unemployment and underemployment in our community, approximating 7 or 8% of our working population, Mr. Speaker, and that's, really that's quite high. So people who are employed often feel very lucky to have employment, given the hardship they may face if they leave their employment and look elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, we feel very strongly here in the NDP caucus that all workers in this province should have the equal protection of the law, all of the laws of the province. We were extremely disappointed when this government brought forward its Smoke-Free Places Act, that it failed to provide equal and adequate protection to all of the workers of Nova Scotia. In particular, that piece of legislation exempted the casino. But what it did provide for, it provided for municipal governments to be able to, it provided for municipal governments to make their own bylaws and in fact go further than what the Ham government had been prepared to do with respect to smoke-free places. And Mr. Speaker, some municipalities took up that challenge. There are jurisdictions now all over the world that are moving in this direction. And many parts of many states in the United States for quite long periods of time, Mr. Speaker, have had smoke-free public places. The research that has been done demonstrates that the fears that business often have that they will be negatively impacted by smoke-free places legislation, in fact, aren't justified. In reality, often the legislation comes into effect and there's a bit of a bump. But then the number of people who come out and partake of the hospitality industry and the services that are available are as robust as they were before smoke-free legislation as ever. So, Mr. Speaker, in addition to this, the casino here in Nova Scotia would be in good company. There are many casinos, many smoke-free casinos throughout the world and indeed in North America and in Canada. And why this government has felt the need to respond in this way. And we saw a fair amount of backpedaling by the minister and by the premier on this. They initially started out, when they introduced this particular amendment in the Financial Measures Act, they started out making extreme claims about what the implications of not taking this action would be financially for Nova Scotians, and how, they had no alternative. They absolutely had to bring forward these measures to exempt the casino. If they didn't, Nova Scotians would be on the hook for hundreds of millions of dollars. And it was for this reason that they were introducing this amendment. It was only after a fair amount of public debate and some negative publicity, including negative comments in the editorials of the major daily newspapers, that we started to see the Minister of Finance back off a bit and say, well, yes, you know, this amendment really is just buying us a bit of time so that we can have discussions with the casino operators. We can look at the dispute resolution mechanism as a way to resolve any concerns that they might have. And it's unlikely that we would ever really need this particular measure in the Financial Measures Act in terms of exempting the casino here in Metro or in Cape Breton from these amendments. But Mr. Speaker, you know, I have to say that this government has this tendency to overreact, to take a sledgehammer to a fly. We've seen this over and over again, that before they look at the situation and they look at realistically what's in the best interests of Nova Scotians, what's in the best interests of the community, they seem to be incapable of doing this. And they quite often look at what's in the best interests of the corporations, what's in the best interests of the big operators. And this, I think, is very much reflected in this particular amendment that has been brought forward by the finance minister as part of the Financial Measures Act. I've stood here before my place, Mr. Speaker, and I've asked the question, what's so special, what's so unique about the casino that they wield this kind of power with this government that the small business community don't wield? I mean, we saw many hospitality industry establishments come here to Province House to plead their case last spring around the Smoke-Free Measures Act. And this government did not respond one whit to that steady stream of hard-working entrepreneurs from our community who have, I think, demonstrated their loyalty and their interest in the province and in the community, not just in terms of the services they provide, but many of these people are sponsors of local ball teams and many charitable ventures, and they truly are people who are grounded in the community, invested in the community, and participants in our community. And what they asked for and what they continue to ask for, Mr. Speaker, at the Law Amendments Committee is a level playing field. They ask for some respect, really, which is not something this government has had in great abundance toward the ordinary, hardworking person in this province. They want some respect so that they don't have an unfair, they don't have to be up against a large American corporation that is given an unfair advantage in terms of the operation of a service here in Nova Scotia. And essentially that's what Clause 14 does, Mr. Chair. It provides for the casino, the operator of the casino, which is not a locally based business. It provides them with some kind of special status in our community so that they don't have to be subject to or conform to municipal bylaws that every other operator in the hospitality industry within HRM and within the CBRM will have to conform to. And this can be seen as nothing more than the most unfair of situations that you could imagine, Mr. Speaker. It is profoundly unfair and disrespectful to those those organizations, those small businesses, those operators, those hardworking people. And at the same time, this amendment does nothing to address the very real health care concerns that have been brought forward on behalf of workers at the casino and people who are in a situation where it's very difficult to come forward and represent themselves, as a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, in terms of this legislation. There are those who will make the claim that ventilated spaces are what is required to deal with the exposure to secondhand smoke, but this does not in any way adequately address the real concerns, the real health concerns for people who have to work in those ventilated spaces, and the fact that ventilation, there's no such thing as 100% successful ventilation of the very, very harmful carcinogenic substances in secondhand smoke. So, Mr. Speaker, this is of great concern to us that this particular clause has been embedded in the Financial Measures Act that will strip the municipalities that have had the courage to address the inequities of the smoke-free legislation introduced by this government last spring out of this act. And we would hope that the government could be persuaded to, we hope that the government would be persuaded to do something different. So, Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, what I would like to propose is an amendment to Clause 14, and I would amend Clause 14 in the following manner, Mr. Speaker. I would delete line 1 and delete subclause 2. And so, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I would move this amendment and take my place.
The Honourable Member for Richmond, would he permit an introduction? The Honourable the Minister of Natural Resources.
Just very quickly. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank the Honourable Member for yielding the floor. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you, Mr. Chairman, all members of the House, my nephew who is visiting from Toronto, Greg Olive, and my daughter Stephanie, who are up in the gallery, and I would ask members to welcome them to the legislature. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to our guests. Welcome to all our guests in the gallery this afternoon. The Honourable, I'm getting lots of help here. The Honourable the Member for Richmond.
Thank you, Speaker, and it's a pleasure to rise today and to say a few words on Bill number 36, Financial Measures Act, but specifically on Clause 14, which is where we've arrived at today. Now, Speaker, debate on this clause today is quite ironic because when one looks at some of the actions of this government over the past few weeks and past few days, it really shows to you how this government seems to have been sending different messages out to Nova Scotians.
Order, please. Has the Honourable Member for Richmond a copy of the amendment that was recently introduced by the... Okay. The amendment is in order, and technically, I guess we're supposed to be speaking on the amendments. Where the Honourable Member doesn't have the amendment, I guess one is put in front of him now, so I just thought I should inform the Honourable Member that we're to speak now to the amendment that has been introduced and is in order. The Honourable Member for Richmond.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And on the amendment and on Clause 14, as I was saying, the government has been sending different messages out in the last little while. This is a government, keep in mind, Mr. Chairman, that shortly after they got elected, one of the first of many labor disputes that they had was with our paramedics. Now, did they settle this? Did they were able to come to a reasonable solution and to deal with it in a prudent, speedy, and timely fashion? Not at all, Mr. Chair. Here we saw paramedics, a part of our society that is so valued and so much depended on. Here they are on strike. Still remember the ambulance parked here at Province House with its lights on. This government was unwilling to bend when it came to paramedics. Move forward, Mr. Speaker, a year later, and we have Bill 68 with the nurses. Again, is the government willing to deal with this as an efficient, timely matter in a spirit of cooperation? Not at all. They bring in one of the most regressive pieces of legislation ever seen in this province with Bill 68. They put our nurses out on strike, endangering the health and safety of our residents in this province, refusing to give in. Now, Mr. Speaker, fast forward to 2003, and here we are, day 40 or more of the strike by the RRSS workers. Again, was the government willing to deal with this in a timely manner, in a spirit of cooperation? Not at all. They're out on strike. Make matters worse, Mr. Speaker, to bring it right to today, we now have the Millhaven home, seniors home, where the workers there have voted to go on strike. More to come. Now, Mr. Speaker, one asks, here is a government that has proven itself to be rigid, unwilling to bend, uncompromising, and unwilling to reflect the values that Nova Scotians have in dealing with these public sector employees. Yet, Mr. Speaker, all of a sudden comes Bill number 36 and Clause 14, which we have before us today. The Halifax Regional Municipality, following a lead from other municipal units throughout the entire province and saying they want a 100% smoking ban in the municipality, including the casinos. Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, coming from an area, Richmond County was one of the first counties to go with a 100% ban. In fact, even before that ban, many of the community centers throughout our county had already implemented that ban on their own, not needing municipal legislation to do so. Yet, Mr. Speaker, after HRM does that, lo and behold, who's the first to come in and say, we have to make amendments to your legislation? But the Minister of Finance and the Premier. What do they say? They say, we fear that the casino might have negative financial repercussions if there's a 100% smoking ban. So we are going to bring in Bill number 36, and we're going to make this change to protect the casino. Now, Mr. Speaker, did this take them a year to put this in place? Did it take them 2 years to put this in place? Did it even take them 6 months to bring this forward? Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, this government was willing to bend and to do everything possible to appease the casinos in this province. They took the nurses to strike, the paramedics to strike, the RSS workers are still on strike, and now nursing home workers are going out on strike. Yet, in 2 weeks, they were able to bring forward an amendment in the form of Clause 14 to appease the casinos. The Minister of Finance came in and said, look, if we don't do this, it could cost the taxpayers of Nova Scotia hundreds of millions of dollars. The casinos are going to walk away. They're packing their bags. They're going home. That's what the Minister of Finance told us. And he said, that is why I need to put this in here. But yet every time he'd talk, he'd refer to a previous government signed a contract, which leads me to wonder, Mr. Speaker, if this had to do about sound public policy or cheap politics by this government. And I think the reaction that we've gotten from Nova Scotians makes it clear that they've passed judgment and they see this as nothing more than cheap politics by this government. Yet, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, to make it even more interesting, the casinos are now coming and saying, well, I don't know why the government's doing this. We never told them that we were going to walk away. We never said that a smoking ban was going to have negative effects on our finances and that we were going to exercise our option of this being an action that would cause a termination. So why is this happening, Mr. Chair? If the casinos are not clearly saying this, they're now saying we don't know why the government's reacting as such. Why is this being brought forward? Yet, Mr. Speaker, in the legislation and in the agreement, there is room for a 30-day time frame that even if this government were to go to arbitration with the casino on this issue and lose, they would have 30 days to bring forward changes to address the concern of the casino if they lost. Now, Mr. Speaker, 30 days. The Minister of Finance and the Premier tell us, well, we can't trust the opposition. 30 days might not be enough time to pass an amendment. Well, Mr. Speaker, that's not something to blame the opposition. That is a sign of a weak government that is incapable of being able to control their own legislative agenda. I believe we've seen that here in this session, like so many other sessions, where this government, even with a majority, has been unable to control their own legislative agenda, Mr. Speaker. What this comes down to is very simple. Smoking in this day and age, Nova Scotians have clearly told us, should be a health and safety issue. Not just good public policy, but health and safety. Now, Mr. Speaker, we don't need any more statistics. Just recently, we saw the lady, a crusader, I can't remember her name offhand, who unfortunately passed away from lung cancer. A lady who was known to go throughout schools, throughout the country, to speak about her experience. I believe she'd start off her speech by saying, I am an idiot, or I was an idiot, I think is what she may have said, Ms. Starbucks, who indicated, she was willing to call herself an idiot, saying, I've recognized the errors of my ways in smoking and not knowing what exactly it was doing to my body and doing to my health. Now, Mr. Speaker, her experience and her ability to share her experience with high school students and with Canadians has brought us in many ways to where we are at today. Smoking is no longer acceptable. It is no longer acceptable in public. In many ways, Mr. Speaker, people now have signs in their own homes saying, please respect this as a smoke-free place. They don't even want smoking in their homes. Many people even put signs up in their automobiles saying, please do not smoke in my vehicle. Now, Mr. Speaker, to now see a government that in this day and age, in 2003, with all of the statistics, with all of the presentations we saw at law amendments, whether it be from Smoke Free Nova Scotia, the Canadian Cancer Society, the Medical Society, for this government to still say they don't recognize smoking as a health and safety issue, Mr. Speaker, is clearly an admission by this government that they are clearly out of touch with the priorities of Nova Scotians. Bill 68 was a reflection of how out of touch they are. Bringing the paramedics to a strike shows how out of touch they are. Allowing the RRSS workers to be on strike for over 40 days is clearly the most clear signal this government has sent that they are out of touch with the priorities of Nova Scotians. Now, Mr. Speaker, what the Canadian Cancer Society said when they came in is they said, look at the agreement that you have with the casino. The protection you need is right there, because it says in the agreement that regardless of any other sections of the Act, the requirement by the operator to ensure the health and safety of its employees and its patrons supersedes any other section of the agreement. So, Mr. Speaker, if we had a government that was willing to go forward and say, it is our position that smoking is a health and safety issue, therefore, based on that, under the terms of the agreement, you are to protect the health and safety of your workers and patrons, therefore, the 100% smoking ban brought in by HRM will be upheld. The agreement allows it to be upheld, and we are not going to turn the tables back on the efforts brought by Nova Scotians and by this House to put an end to smoking in public and to be able to say workers' safety shall supersede the other clauses of this Act. Because at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, anyone who visits the casino comes in and leaves. The workers come in and stay for their whole shift, day in, day out, day in, day out. They are the ones that when they're sitting at one of the blackjack tables, the players come and go within an 8-hour shift, but the dealer is there for the most part of it. The dealer who's exposed to the smoking and to the effects that smoking is having on them, Mr. Speaker. That is why, as I said, this is a health and safety issue. And if this government, with a premier who's a doctor, said we are going to recognize this as health and safety and move forward, there would be no need for Clause 14. And why this government continues to fail to do that, Mr. Speaker, is a bit of a mystery to all of us. As I said before, many have said this is just cheap politics to bring the casino issue back up. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, it would be even more cheaper politics if workers' safety was being put at risk because this government simply wants to play a cheap political game. Because at the end of the day, politics aside, this is an issue about the health and safety of those employees. Now, Speaker, you might ask, why was there not casino workers who came to law amendments to speak on this? Very simple, Mr. Speaker. We had one presenter who came in, ironically, a young gentleman. He had been in before when the Smoke-Free Places Act was introduced, and he came in with a specific intent of saying, I have a brother who works at the casino, and the casinos should be part of the Smoke-Free Places Act, and he should not have to be exposed to smoke as part of his work, as part of his employment. He came in again with this bill on Bill 36 and said, Clause 14 once again puts my brother's health and safety at risk. I believe he indicated his brother, who was an employee at a casino, had a young child. And he continually referred to the fact that he wanted to make sure that his niece, that her father's health would be protected. And I asked him the question and said, why are there not more casino workers here? And he said, it's very simple. They're very concerned about their jobs. They do not want to come here and expose themselves to the risks that they may have retribution from their employer. Now, Mr. Speaker, maybe that won't happen. And I'm not standing here to say that that is something that the casino would do. But the mere fear of that, many of those workers there are probably happy to have that employment, and they want to maintain it. Mr. Speaker, as part of maintaining that, checking their health and safety at the door when they punch their cards in, it should not be part of their employment or be part of the income that they must rely upon. Mr. Speaker, as I said, there is protections in the agreement to go to arbitration on this issue. If the government should lose, and I would submit to you, if this government put forward the positions that have been discussed by the Canadian Cancer Society, the Medical Society, Smoke Free Nova Scotia, I would submit to you that the government would win on this issue. But even before we talk about the government winning, we have to even establish that there's a problem here. And Mr. Chair, I would submit to you that from what we've heard from the casino operators, that problem doesn't even appear to exist. We have not seen clearly before this House any evidence to establish as legislators the need for this clause other than the Minister of Finance claiming he got a phone call through the Gaming Corporation. We have nothing more than that, Mr. Chair. We don't have a letter. We don't have a notice of intention. We don't have even media reports that we could rely upon as responsible legislators to say, yes, this is a legitimate concern. The government's course of action is a legitimate response to that. We don't have anything of the sort, Mr. Chair. And that is why it would be irresponsible as legislators to approve this type of section, which flies in the face of legislation brought in by our duly elected municipal colleagues in the HRM. For us to go in and to undo legislation they have brought, Mr. Speaker, I would submit to you, is a very serious encroachment upon the rights of the municipal units as independent bodies. And it is something that we must use very carefully. And we must make sure that it is the appropriate course and that is not some sort of a hammer that we want to be holding over their heads, that at any time the government can turn around and undo the legislation passed by the municipal units. Legislation in this case, I would say, Mr. Speaker, that the municipality of Halifax certainly did their due diligence on before passing this legislation. So, Mr. Speaker, again, Mr. Chair, I submit to you that if the government was able to bring forward a comprehensive argument on paper that they could present to us, showing us that this is why we need to approve Clause 14, all we have heard is ramble from the minister about this costing hundreds of millions of dollars, nothing to substantiate his claim other than a purported phone call made. We don't know by whom, we don't know to whom it was, or what the nature of the call was. But again, I submit to you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, this is a perfect example of how this government's true recognition of the priorities of Nova Scotians truly is. And I submit to you again in closing, when it came to nurses, when it came to paramedics, when it came to the RRSS workers, there was no rush, there was no need to negotiate, there was no need to be fair or to act in an efficient manner. All three groups were forced to the picket line by this government. Yet, when there's a hint that the casinos may have an objection to municipal legislation, within 2 weeks, a bill is brought forward. In this case, it's contained in Bill 36 in the form of Clause 14. I would submit to you, Mr. Chair, in this case, the agreement with the casino does provide for an arbitration process and provides for a 30-day grace period for the government to react with legislation if required. On that basis, I would submit to you there is no need for Clause 14, that there is a process in place to protect the interests of government if that is truly the concern that is at hand here and is not an attempt at crass politics by this government. And on that basis, that is why, Mr. Speaker, we would be in favor of supporting Clause 1 as proposed by the member from Halifax Needham, and I would move that clause now.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'm pleased to see the member from Richmond is going to be supporting the amendment, very responsible amendment, I believe, brought forward by my colleague, the member from Halifax Needham. Now, Mr. Speaker, as I begin my brief remarks in support of this amendment, maybe my opening statement will really sum up what I think about the current Clause 14 as exists in the Financial Measures Act, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I believe that the current clause as it is right now is asinine. And Mr. Chair, I can't put it any clearer than that. It is asinine to have that current clause in this bill. And we would be, I believe, very irresponsible to be standing in our places today while we have the opportunity. We would be irresponsible if we didn't stand in our places to oppose Clause 14 as it currently exists in this bill. I look forward, Mr. Chair, should we have the opportunity to have a recorded vote on this, and I know that there are some members on the government benches who believe, certainly when the Smoke-Free Places Act was introduced, believe that we should have banned smoking in all public places. So I'm sure if we are given the opportunity of a recorded vote, that there will be members on the government bench who will support the amendment that is brought forward, like my good friend and your colleague, Mr. Chair, the member from Sackville-Beaverbank. I'm sure if he supported banning smoking in all public places, that he will, Mr. Chair, be supporting banning smoking in the casinos in violation, Mr. Chair, and going against the explicit wishes of the Halifax Regional Municipality and their council. And I might add, Mr. Chair, the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, which itself has also passed and which is now, over the 2-year implementation period, almost already completed the implementation of their non-smoking in public places ban in that municipality. Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Is there anybody, I ask this question, including to the Minister of Finance, who is a champion of smoking in the casino? Is there anybody on the government benches that believes that being exposed to secondhand smoke is good for you? Does the Minister of Finance believe that those who work in the casinos are somehow exempt, that they will not suffer the harmful effects of secondhand smoke because it's being those cigarettes are being smoked in a gambling facility? Does he or any of his colleagues believe that? Does a member from Bedford Fall River believe that it's okay to smoke in a casino and it won't hurt you, but if you smoke anywhere else, it does? How about the member from Pictou East or Antigonish or the noted author from Kings North? Does the noted author from Kings North who likes to write editorials, does he believe that cigarette smoke in a casino is less harmful than cigarette smoke in a bar or in a tavern or in a restaurant or in somebody's private home? Does he believe, does the member from Guysborough, Port Hawkesbury, believe that those who work in a casino are not valued as much as those who work in any other workplace in this province, and therefore their health is not that important? Do you believe that? Does a member from Dartmouth South believe that it's okay, you can pollute the lungs and the health of those who work in a casino, but it's okay to do that, but not okay to do it to those who work in the establishments within his constituency? Does he believe that? I don't, Mr. Chair. And medical evidence is very clear. Now, I might be wrong in this. The Tories might have some different information. Maybe the former Minister of Health, maybe the Minister of Justice now, in his former life as Minister of Health, came across some obscure, very, very obscure studies that says cigarette smoke in a casino won't hurt you. Maybe he did and would like to share that. Or the minister responsible for health promotion. Maybe the minister responsible for health promotion, he's got that definitive study that says cigarette smoke in a casino won't hurt you. And maybe the minister responsible for health promotion would like to share his information with us. Maybe he'd like to share his information with Smoke-Free Nova Scotia. Maybe he'd like to educate or inform the Canadian Cancer Society or the Nova Scotia Cancer Society or the medical profession. I mean, he may not only be an expert in fiddling, he might, this minister responsible for health promotion, might have this definitive study that shows that smoke, secondhand smoke in a casino won't hurt you. Do you have that, Mr. Minister? I'd welcome, Mr. Chair, a point of order from the minister or the Minister of Health if they have such a definitive study that they would like to get up in a point of order or a point of information, point of privilege, to table that in the House, or even give us the information as to where we could find it. Because, Mr. Chair, I suspect you know, just like I do, they don't have any such study. Because they know, the Minister of Justice knows, that secondhand smoke in a casino is every bit as harmful as secondhand smoke in a bingo hall, in a tavern, in a lounge, in a restaurant. You name it, Mr. Chair, that secondhand smoke that is wafting around the people who work in that casino contains all of those baddies. How many chemicals are in it? Something like 5,000? A lot of them anyway, Mr. Chair, and they're not good for your health. And those same baddies are in, Mr. Chair, that secondhand smoke in the casino just the same way, Mr. Chair, as they would be in a tavern in the town of Kentville. No different. You can change the brand, but the smoke contains the same things. Now, somehow, goes against any logic that I've got, the Tories have decided it's okay to smoke in the casino. Now, I should have asked the Premier this, Mr. Chair, as a medical professional. The Minister of Health Promotion couldn't provide me with this information, but the Premier, who is a medical doctor, maybe he's got those definitive studies that shows that secondhand smoke won't hurt you in a casino. And I would welcome an opportunity for the Premier to get up on a point of order. to get up in a point of order to present the studies or the references as to where we can find some studies that have been done to show that secondhand smoke in a casino is good for your health. You know, Mr. Chair, a very courageous young woman, Andrea Skinner, left her employment at the casino on the basis that it was an unsafe work environment. And she won her case for employment insurance. Obviously, Mr. Chair, the tribunal, the body that heard her appeal, doesn't agree with the Premier, with the money man for the Tory government, the Minister of Finance, doesn't agree with the Minister of Health Promotion that smoking is good for you in a casino, or the Minister of Health, because, Mr. Chair, the tribunal agreed and said that that was a grounds to leave the employment, that it was an unhealthy workplace, and that she should be entitled to her unemployment insurance for leaving an unhealthy workplace. Ask the government members from King South, from Annapolis, the Minister of Transportation, the Minister of Labor, all of you. Which one of you over there believes that workers should be forced to work or even allowed to work in an unsafe working environment? An unsafe working environment which could be made safe with very modest changes. You know, we have laws in this province. The Minister of Labor would know this, that says that if a worker is working, for example, on scaffolding, if he's working on the roof, shingling a roof, or working on one of the buildings like across the road, Mr. Chair, where they're sandblasting and fixing up the building, you have to have safety equipment to protect your health as much as possible. The contractor can actually be fined if they knowingly allow their workers to work in an unsafe manner. The workers can be fined, and the employer has a responsibility to ensure that the workers know what the rules are and that the workplace is safe. But you know, here we have the government which knows. Haven't heard the Premier or the Minister of Health Promotion or the Minister of Health stand up to provide some kind of assessment or study that says that smoking in casinos is good for you. So they know it's not, yet they knowingly are saying that this workplace, the casino, is going to be exempt from that health and safety. Because all they have to do, this legislation gives the government the ability to say, you're exempt from the HRM bylaw. I congratulate the HRM. And whether you agree or you disagree with smoking in public places, at least they were trying to make it uniform. Now, I heard the Minister of Finance. Minister of Finance goes on and says, we're also concerned about the jobs of those who work in the casino. Well, I'm not somebody who goes a great deal out, Mr. Chair, to nightlife around town. But I know that there's the upper deck, the lower deck, there's O'Carroll's and a bunch of other clubs in the very middle deck too, I'm told by the Minister of Finance. You get all these other establishments within a few hundred feet of the casino. And guess what? They're going to be smoke-free. They're going to be smoke-free. all in the downtown part of Halifax, and to the Minister of Natural Resources, a member from Dartmouth South, just a short ferry ride across the way. There are other night spots and places we go in during the daytime as well. Clubs, bars, taverns that employ Nova Scotians. And they're going to be smoke-free. And you know, Mr. Chair, and I'm sure you do, because you can be quite astute at times. You know, Mr. Chair, didn't say he always was, but can be. That was a half compliment. That's normally as far as I go with a government member, Mr. Chair. But, Mr. Chair, those businesses, they know that their patrons who want to have a smoke with a drink will go across. If they're coming from Dartmouth or if they're going downtown, they'll go to the casino. And, you know, Premier likes to talk about publicly owned facilities. Premier knows. The third party, the Liberals, they know that casino is actually legally owned by the province. Because it's against the law to own privately run, owned gambling facilities in the province, in the country. It's against criminal law. Now, Mr. Chair, that doesn't mean we have to own the building. But we have to have the right to own that, and that building will eventually be ours. We're paying something like, I think it's about 12% interest. And of course, the operator of it, an American company that is running it for the government, they're like the franchisee. They're the Tim Hortons of the gambling world here in Nova Scotia. They've got the government contract to run the casino. They're, of course, making about 6%, could be off a percentage or so, not by much, in the amount that they are paid in the way of interest and what I'm sure they're paying for interest. So they're making money there. But what this really boils down to, and what really concerns me, is that this is being driven not so much as a health issue by the province, and not just as a way to evade having to pay out a penalty to the casino operator. My concern, Mr. Chair, is that this actually looks like a way for the government to increase their take, to increase their revenue. Because you know, Mr. Chair, if patrons, those who smoke, are going to be encouraged to go to the casino to play the slots, to play at the tables, to have a cigarette with their drink, Mr. Chair. If more loonies and toonies roll into the casino, and some bigger bucks too, we, of course, were told when the Liberals introduced it that this was going to be a massive draw. We were going to have tourists flooding in from all around the world, these high rollers. They were going to skip Vegas. They were going to skip all of the big casino towns and come rolling into Halifax so they could play our slot machines and at the table. Well, that didn't happen, but we knew it wouldn't happen. Even the Tories, who are still here, who were there then, even they knew that the Liberals were wrong. But you know, Mr. Chair, if they can exempt this, and if that can entice more people to go to the casinos, the smokers, A, the volume of secondhand smoke will increase, but of course, according to the Tories, secondhand smoke in a casino is good for you because they want to exempt them from the smoking bylaw. That's logic, isn't it? That's obviously logic because Tories, you know, you'd have to say, Mr. You think the Tories are good, right? I think Tories bad, but you think Tories good. And you know, Mr. Chair, if the Tories were good, if they were, they wouldn't be trying to set up double standards, nor would they want to put workers' health and safety at risk. So they would not even consider this, banning or exempting them from the smoking. Now, it's like the government, they do so many things half measure. We're told that they're going to take care of the issue for seniors and health care costs by not the upcoming, but by the next election. So that's too big an issue. You can't handle that in one. I'm going to be on that point, Mr. Chair. I assure you. And they said they can move forward with a bigger ban on smoking. But what they're trying to do is just inch things along a little bit. As an election's rolling around, they don't want to shake up any egg too much, because they're rather shaky right now, and they don't want to possibly lose some votes, which you're going to lose anyway. Nova Scotians have got to be asking, where are this government's priorities? Where are this government's priorities? The verb is agreeing with priorities, because priorities is plural, so I have to use. Anyway, my pronunciation. Well, that's true. It has been suggested to me on more than one occasion. It sounds like I'm breaking in a new tongue, Mr. Chair. And sometimes, I'm not always enunciating quite as well as I should. But where are the priorities? Are today's Nova Scotia families telling the Premier that we want you to have smoking in casinos and harm the businesses, all of the other competitors to the casino in HRM and in Cape Breton Regional Municipality? Is he saying that Nova Scotians are telling them that they think that people should be laid off from lounges, from restaurants, and clubs in HRM, so that the province can increase its take from the I almost misspoke there, Mr. Chair. I almost said the insurance industry. That's a gamble too. But Mr. Chair, from the gaming corp, the Minister of Finance, good to see him here today. Maybe the Minister of Finance would like to reconsider a position he had before. He's had some time to have second thought, to repent a little bit about what he is doing with this legislation. Government won't fall on this, Mr. Chair. I wouldn't see, if the government adopts this amendment and basically deletes the exemption powers that they're trying to give, I wouldn't see that as a vote of non-confidence in the government. You won't have to resign for doing the right thing. But the Minister of Finance, he was saying he had legal opinions. It says that the casino could use a smoking ban as a justification for terminating. And the Minister of Finance and I had an interesting little discussion when he was, during his speech. It was one of those discussions that you have, Mr. Chair, through the call of points of order, which leads into a question. And he said to us that he had legal opinions. But Mr. Chair, when I asked him for those legal opinions, he was a little hesitant to provide them. In fact, he was downright reluctant and said no. So then a little bit more in the way of inquiring, Mr. Chair, to the Minister of Finance, discovered that the legal opinion came from his own Nova Scotia Gaming Corporation, for which the Minister of Finance is responsible. Now, we've got two bodies, as you well know, Mr. Chair, but many members on the government benches, particularly those in the back benches, may not have been informed. We have two bodies that are involved with gambling We have the Gaming Corporation. Does anybody know what the other one is? The Gaming Commission, the foundation. One is supposed to regulate, one is supposed to promote. The Minister of Finance's job, the one that he's got the corporation. And its job, Mr. Chair, is to promote gambling. It's the money-making arm. I don't even know who's minister responsible for the commission over there. Oh, it's the Minister of Health Promotion. So, I'm sure they've had a discussion at the table. And I appreciate the fact, not only is the Minister of Health Promotion listening, he's actually being helpful. And I apologize to him for not having told him or not known that he was in charge of the commission. But then, Mr. Chair, I got to scold him, because he shouldn't have been allowing his buddy, the Minister of Finance, to do this asinine thing. The Commission's job is to regulate and to control it, and to look out for the best interests of the Nova Scotians. And the minister responsible for health promotion, also with the commission, surely knows secondhand smoke in a casino, not good. It's not good anywhere, Mr. Chair. But especially in a concentrated area. And the minister would know, I'm sure the gaming minister would know, that people who smoke, if they gamble, chances are in the anxiety of the gambling would tend to smoke a little bit heavier than they might at other occasions. I also know that there are many people who don't smoke except if they have a drink. And you know, in that gaming place down the way, the casino, you can gamble, you can drink, and there you'll be able to smoke. But nowhere else. You know, the Minister of Finance got his advice, the legal interpretation, from his own department, the wing under his charge, whose job it is to maximize profits from gambling. Now, why doesn't he have any credibility on this topic? Welcome to the chair, Mr. Chair. Changing of the chair, so to speak.
Nice to be here with you.
Thank you. I won't repeat everything I said for your benefit, Mr. Chair, but I may come back to it a little later. Mr. Chair, the Minister of Finance knows that, or he should know. If he doesn't know, we'll provide him with a copy of the contract. But I know he's got it unless he's given his last copy away, because he tried to table it a bunch of times. But we still had it from the days when the other bad crowd, the Liberals, were in, and they signed it, Mr. Chair. That contract, Mr. Chair, provides for arbitration. If there is a dispute, and there have been disputes between the government, the Gaming Corporation. Sounds like somebody's thinking I've been speaking for a long time. I've got 30. He wasn't implying that I've been going on too long, was he, Mr. Chair? I'm sure. Everybody else was Minister of Finance says. Well, thank you. At least I may not be getting through to them, but maybe I'm getting under the skin of some of them, Mr. Chair. But you know, the corporation wants to maximize dollars. If they did get, Mr. Chair, if the Minister of Finance did get notice from the casino that they were unhappy with this, it could then go to arbitration, and they would have to prove, they would have to demonstrate that the bylaw, the banning of smoking in the casino, was placing them at a disadvantage and, Mr. Chair, creating great economic harm. I could see them. I could see the Minister of Finance. I hate to say this, Mr. Chair, my good friend, the Minister of Finance, but I could see him wanting the casino to object. Because if they object and are given an exemption, then that creates an even more unlevel playing field, where the casino is given one more advantage over local Nova Scotia businesses. And the minister might want that not on a personal basis, but he's only looking at the loonies and the toonies flowing into the treasury of the provincial government because, you know, they've got some election spending to do, Mr. Chair. They've been out making hundreds of millions of dollars worth of promises, and pretty soon, if something doesn't walk or talk, I'm sure the Tories will be paving it. And if it walks or talks, they'll be out there making some kind of a commitment. So they got to get the money to pay for all of these things. And what a heck of a way to do it. What a heck of a way to do it. And the expense of the workers and the other patrons who go to the casino who don't smoke. No need for it. There is absolutely no need for this clause in the legislation. Because if it did go to arbitration, and if it did look like we were going to lose, which I don't believe we would, because as a previous speaker had pointed out, the Canadian Cancer Society pointed out to the Law Amendments Committee, there is a clause in the legislation which says that health and safety issues supersede all others. And who on the government benches? Does a member from Shelburne? Does a member from Sackville Beaverbank? From Chester St. Margaret's? From Annapolis? Colchester North? South? Do any of you honestly believe that smoking is not a health and safety issue? 99.9% of smokers know that it's a public health issue and a safety issue. So why? Why, Mr. Chair, this asinine clause in the bill? Why would the government do such an asinine thing? The only reason I can think of, only one, not a justification by any stretch of the imagination, the only explanation that I can conceivably think of is that the government envisions that this is somehow going to increase the number of people going to the casino so that more loonies and toonies will drop into the slot machines, the one-armed bandits, more paper will fly across the blackjack tables, and more revenue into the Tory coffers so they can pay for their ever-increasing list of election promises. Be darned with the human toll. Mr. Chair, it's wrong. The amendment that is brought forward by my colleague, the member from Halifax Fairview, or from Halifax Needham, extremely responsible. It does allow for the first clause in that first subclause, or first clause in Section 14 to remain, and that is that allows for a technical change to bring the legislation up to being current, because Chapter 4 of the Acts of 1994-95, the Gaming Control Act, is amended by striking out the planning in the first line and substituting parts 8 and 9 of the Municipal Government Act, because legislation was amended and changed, Mr. Chair. So this would bring, leaving that in, would leave the, have the Gaming Control Act being referenced in the appropriate legislation by the appropriate bills. But, Mr. Chair, it would get rid of the asinine proposal. I've said that a few times, Mr. Chair. I quite like that word in reference to this clause in this bill, because I think it is so fitting. It would delete the asinine proposal that would give the government, yes, it is parliamentary. Yes, checked it several times. I've used it a number of times over the years, but I use it quite sparingly because it's quite strong. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I shouldn't be talking to another. I shouldn't be talking to another deputy speaker.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, or that member at all.
Speak through the chair.
As I'm told. But, Mr. Chair, through you, Mr. Chair, to that other deputy minister. Deputy Speaker, yes,
Minister's
Mr.
on this
Chair.
side, member.
It is indeed a term that is parliamentary. Today, anyway. And you know, Mr. Chair, with those few brief comments, I will resume my seat, but anxiously awaiting for a number of things. I anxiously await the Minister of Finance standing in his place, producing the legal arguments that go against all of the wisdom from all other legal minds that have looked at the contract, for him to present his legal arguments that show that this is necessary. And failing that, Mr. Chair, I look forward to the Minister of Health, the Premier, or the Minister responsible for the Gaming Commission and Health Promotion to table on the floor of this House, their definitive study that shows smoking in casinos, unlike anywhere else, is good for your health. Because everywhere else, Mr. Chair, and I've heard that very Minister of Health Promotions talking about the harmful effects of cigarette smoking and about campaigns to get people off smoking and to keep young people from starting smoking. So I cannot see how the Minister of Health Promotion could possibly, in good conscience, if he's being true to his responsibilities as Minister of Health Promotion, to support the clause as it currently exists. Just, Mr. Chair, as I can't see my colleague, good friend from Sackville-Beaverbank, supporting that clause staying in the bill as it is at the present time, Mr. Chair. So at least, there should be two. I'd say the Premier, Doctor himself, the Minister of Health, that's two more. So there should be at least 4 votes, knowledgeable votes, on the government benches in support of the amendment that is before us. And I don't wish to offend others, Mr. Chair, on the government side, because I know that there are others as well on the government side who are very informed on this topic, and they too, Mr. Chair, would think that it's they wouldn't use the word asinine because it's not good to call the colleagues that or the action by them, but say foolish for the government to be promoting smoking in the casinos. And so I'm sure that they too would like to support the amendment, and hopefully in this government that promised to be open and to allow dissent within the government ranks, hopefully as the dying days of this government draws clear, some members of this government will see fit to take the Premier up on the commitment that he made for an open, accountable system, and will vote in support of the very reasonable amendment brought forward by my colleague, the member for Halifax, Needham. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll assume my seat while somebody else takes over.
Thank you for your comment. I'd like to recognize the Liberal Caucus, the member from Cape Breton South, on amendment to Clause 14, Bill 36. You have the floor, member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm rising in support of the amendment proposed here today, Bill 36, pages 4 and 5, Clause 14, line 1, and delete 1 and delete subclause 2. Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to speak long on this, but I do want to make a couple of points that I feel are important to reiterate in this House. We've talked about this bill before. We've had much debate on this bill in second reading, and it's, Mr. Speaker, it's all about exposure, and it's about health and safety of workers in the workplace in Nova Scotia. And Mr. Speaker, it's always about fairness. It's also about fairness. And in this particular case, what I feel and our caucus feels is that the government is presenting half a package to the legislature with this in regards to smoking in public places in Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I believe that if the government is serious about this, they will agree with us as a caucus that there should be a total ban on smoking in public places in this province, period. Because we know, and it's been proven, without a shadow of a doubt, that smoking kills in this province. Smoking kills. That's not me musing about something that might be an abstract thing. That's something that's a fact. Also, Mr. Speaker, we also know that secondhand smoking kills, and that's been proven. So, Mr. Speaker, why would a government bring legislation here that's going to subject some workers in the province to the ravages of secondhand smoke and not others? The playing field is not level here. They are excluding workers who work in casinos. There's a casino in Sydney and there's a casino in Halifax. And the regional municipality bill went a lot further than this particular bill, particularly in Cape Breton, where the council of that area, I believe, acted correctly in their assertion that smoking in public places is wrong because it's a danger to your health. It kills. No other way you can't sugarcoat it at all. There's enough evidence on the table to tell people in Nova Scotia that, and everywhere else in this world, that tobacco kills. And Mr. Speaker, I'm certainly not an evangelist out on the street talking about the evils of smoking. If somebody wants to smoke and they're an adult, then they should make up their own minds, Mr. Speaker, as to whether or not they want to do something that's clearly harmful to their own health. You know, they're old enough to make up their own minds. There are a lot of people will give them a lot of advice in that regard, but what I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, is that if you want to endanger your own life by smoking, that's one thing. But if you're going to endanger somebody else's life by smoking, that's quite another thing. And that's where the line is drawn with me. I certainly don't want to tell anybody what they should or should not be doing. But when it's clearly demonstrated that smoking is a health hazard and secondhand smoke kills, then this government has a responsibility to do something about it. And they've chosen not to in terms of the situation with the casino. The workers should not be subjected to having to work in an environment where they're exposed to secondhand smoke. Now, I can tell you firsthand, Mr. Speaker, about the ravages of smoking in my area. Too many of my friends have worked in an area where there was heavy smoking over the years, and today they're suffering the consequences of that with various types of cancers, particularly lung cancer. And I look at that and I say, you know, why couldn't we have been discussing this years ago? Why is it just now we're coming to a realization in this province that smoking is indeed a killer and something has to be done about it? Other people have tried to tell us that over the years.
people like Dr. Ron McCormick, an oncologist at the Cape Breton Regional Hospital in Sydney, who is a person who has dedicated his life not only to the practice of medicine in our area, but also informing people of the ravages caused to humans by smoking. Also, all you have to do, Mr. Speaker, is go to the regional hospital in Sydney, to their cancer unit, which is just recently put in that area. In the mid-90s, started. Construction of that unit and to late 90s was operational with 2 linear accelerators in the area. State-of-the-art cancer treatment center. Why is that center in an area like Sydney? Because of the high incidence of cancers in that area. Not only in Sydney, but in all of industrial Cape Breton, particularly. Some of it caused, Mr. Speaker, by industrials that were there for the years and years and years. But, Mr. Speaker, a lot of it caused, which has been demonstrated, documented, from smoking, heavy incidents of smoking. And here we are, we're trying to provide adequate treatment for people that have been ravaged by cancer, that need this kind of treatment at home, and they're getting it. But I also ask myself, and others want to know, why the educational process or the empirical evidence that is now on the table wasn't presented a long time ago, so we wouldn't need those kinds of facilities. We wouldn't need the kind of expert support we get from the oncologists and their team in the Cape Breton Regional Municipality to deal with the problem. At the same time, they're trying to educate people of the hazards of cigarette smoking. But here we have demonstrated that we're prepared to at least entertain the notion that smoking in public places should be severely restricted. Well, if we agree with that, why don't we go all the way? What is the difficulty with going all the way? No one has yet convinced me why this whole clause is not out of that bill, and that the workers in the casino are protected along with every other worker in the province of Nova Scotia. And as was so rightfully pointed out, that people will take the opportunity to go to that place instead of other places in the province because of the fact they can smoke in that facility. But what about the dealers or the people that handle the beverage sales in the casino that are in contact with these people who are smoking all the time? They should be protected, Mr. Speaker. They should have the same protection that's going to be afforded to other workers who work in public venues in this province. Mr. Speaker, employees should not be forced to work in that kind of an environment anymore. You know, this is the year 2003, Mr. Speaker, and all the evidence is on the table. All the evidence is on the table that cigarette smoking kills. I mean, it's gotten so bad in our area, Mr. Speaker, that we have one of the chief oncologists in the area, a person who has dedicated his life, and I mentioned his name before, Ron McCormick, now going to the route of putting letters into the local press trying to impress upon people the problems that can occur with cigarette smoking. He's taking time out from his busy treatment schedule of patients to try to do a public education program as well. He feels that strongly about it. And so do his team, so do the other oncologists in the area, so do all the other professionals that work in that field. And here they are, looking up here to the legislature for leadership in this regard. And what do they get? They're disappointed, Mr. Chairman. They're disappointed that the legislators of this province have chosen to exempt certain workers from protection. And that's exactly what's happening here. And it's not acceptable, Mr. Speaker, that we exempt workers from protection, that we expose certain workers in this province to secondhand smoke. You know, how can government members vote in favor of that legislation without taking that clause out? How can the Minister of Health Promotion vote in favor of this bill or vote against this amendment? How can the Minister of Education or the Minister of Health Promotion vote in favor of this bill unless it's amended and vote against the amendment? How can the members opposite who have demonstrated, for example, the member from Sackville Beaverbank who made such a grand gesture in the last session of this House about his opposition to anything, to public smoking anywhere? How can he, again, he probably will be conveniently absent when this vote is taken because of the possibility of incurring the wrath of the government, even though that Premier vows that he's going to allow free votes in this House. When? On what bills? This is not a money bill in terms of this clause. This is not a rise and fall clause of the government. So why wouldn't the Premier allow members to vote their conscience on this bill? You know, I would hope that when this bill passes this House, if this amendment does not stand up and is voted down, I would hope that the press will ask the Minister of Health Promotion in this province, the member for Inverness, why he could stand in his place here and vote this amendment down, and then go outside there and tell Nova Scotians that he's implementing measures to protect your health in Nova Scotia. Now, if that's not the height of hypocrisy, I don't know what is. So I would expect that Minister of Health Promotion, the member from Inverness, will be true to his convictions and vote for the amendment. I would expect that to be the case. If not, I would expect that minister to resign. I would expect that minister to resign if he does not vote for this amendment. Because if he votes against this amendment, he truly does not believe what he's trying to tell people of Nova Scotia, what his health promotion department is all about. So that minister has a clear choice as far as I'm concerned. Well, actually, he has two choices. He can do what the Premier tells him to do, or he can vote his conscience over there, or he can be absent like some of the others will probably be when this comes to a vote. That's the easiest way out. Just disappear and say you weren't around when the vote came. But the member from Inverness, who is a member of the Cabinet, has more of a responsibility than most members over there because he's also the Minister of Health Promotion. The Minister of Health Promotion who would allow employees to be subject to secondhand smoke in a public venue. Now, I don't think it would stretch the imagination of anybody to call that somewhat hypocritical. But nevertheless, this is politics, and the Premier keeps talking about these elusive free votes, but we never see them coming to the House. But there are members here who expressed some strong concerns about this bill in the last session of this House and have been brought to heel by the Premier. Where are they going to be when this vote comes this time? Are they going to vote with the government, against the amendment, or are they going to be absent from the vote? Either way, they're ducking the issue and ducking what they said they were going to do just a year ago. Mr. Speaker, I want to get to this vote because there are other things we want to talk about, perhaps in other clauses, but I also, before I take my place, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to, again, remind Nova Scotians that the government has a responsibility here to protect workers. The evidence is in, Mr. Speaker. It's irrefutable. The people of Nova Scotia have been told about the ravages of secondhand smoke. The people who are professionals, the Cancer Society, Smoke Free Nova Scotia, all of the other interest groups, and there are many of them. There are individuals who are out there. There are people who are trying to impress upon young people in this province the damage that smoking can do over a long period of time, trying to stop young people from smoking. And I think we all have a responsibility to make them aware of the information that we now have in our possession, to tell Nova Scotians that smoking, yes, kills, and that secondhand smoke kills. And little by little, we can do something about it, Mr. Speaker. We can do something about it by accepting amendments like the one before today. It's one small step in a number of steps that will ultimately see smoking in Nova Scotia banned in public places. And as I said when I started my remarks, this is not about trying to get people to change their ways, although I sincerely believe that as far as young people are concerned, we should all be trying to stop young people from starting to smoke and giving them enough information to have at their disposal that smoking is bad, bad, bad for their health. Young people, we have to continue to impress upon them the ravages of smoking and what it'll do over the long term. But that's another day. That's something else. We should continue that process in the public domain with groups like the Cancer Society, with groups like Smoke Free Nova Scotia, with oncologists like Ron McCormick, dedicated people. We have an ongoing opportunity there to put that knowledge out and continue to put it out to impress upon young people in this province that smoking kills. And we're doing that. But here we have an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to do something constructive in this House to improve that bill by saying to the workers in the casino, we're going to protect you from secondhand smoke, the same as we're going to protect workers in the bars and restaurants. That level playing field we talked about. The level playing field. Workers in the casinos, Mr. Speaker, should not have to be subject to having their health put at risk because of a loophole in the bylaw or because somebody decided they were going to favor the casino instead of the people working in the casino. And it was said here before in this House, and I said it in this House, that if smoking in secondhand smoking is banned, or the ravages of secondhand smoke is understood by the people working in the casino, and it is, that we ban smoking from the casino, which is a public place. Do you honestly think, Mr. Speaker, that the casino is going to pack their bags and leave Nova Scotia? That cash cow that's down there, that's making millions, are going to walk out of Nova Scotia because you're not allowed to smoke in there? Give me a break, Mr. Speaker. That's not going to happen. And this government, I think, blinked too soon in dealing with the casino on this. The negotiations should have taken place before this clause was ever injected into this bill. But it didn't, because these guys caved in before they even got to the bargaining table. And having said that, Mr. Speaker, I believe the amendment is one, Mr. Speaker, that should be supported by the government, because I haven't heard a good reason yet why the government would not support this. I've heard government members, backbenchers, say they favored a total ban on smoking in public places. Well, let them stand up when this vote comes and vote their conscience in that. And, Mr. Speaker, I will end my remarks by saying, and I particularly aim my remarks at the member from Inverness, the Minister of Health Promotion. If he does not vote for this amendment in this bill, that minister, that member should resign. Thank you very much.
Thank the member for his comments, and now recognize a member from the NDP caucus, the member from Dartmouth North. Member, you have the floor. You have 1 hour in turn.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I rise to speak on Clause 14, particularly the amendment of Clause 14, which was put forward by the honourable member from Halifax Needham, and so far has been endorsed by everyone who has been speaking before this legislative assembly. Mr. Chairman, I think it's important for us to recognize the impacts that smoking has on one's health. And I do recall having an early meeting, Mr. Chairman, when this issue was brought up. And I had a meeting with some of the people in the hospitality industry who came to my office and indicated that, look, if there's going to be a ban or a cessation on smoking in public places, then it ought to be covered for everyone. And they were absolutely concerned that the casino operators had an exemption and that they weren't affected by this smoking legislation. I remember talking to those individuals, and I told those individuals from the hospitality industry that, look, we believed in a total ban on smoking in public places as a political party, and that we believe that the casino has no exemption from this particular legislation as well. They obviously had some concern, Mr. Chairman, because they must have felt that their voice wasn't being heard by the government in power, because they had indicated that they had talked to the government, both the Minister of Health at that time and the Minister of Environment and Labor at that time as well on this particular issue. They have indicated that obviously there was a need to get some government body on side that would listen to their particular concerns. And I must say that the Halifax Regional Municipality brought in a bylaw that would in fact ban smoking in public places, and that there would be a total ban, and that would include the Halifax Casino. Well, lo and behold, Mr. Chairman, the provincial government recognized that this might have an impact upon their financial obligation to the casino. And they felt that they might be on the hook for some $178 million should the casino opt out, because it may restrict their opportunity to generate revenue. Having said that, the municipal government, the provincial government at the time, should have recognized when the Municipal Act was developed in the year 2000, that came before the legislature and was approved, was a municipal government act that said that we would give the municipalities some autonomy, that the municipalities would have the autonomy, Mr. Chairman, to enact bylaws and legislation that they felt would be in the best interest of their citizens. And that was called the Order of Good Government at the time, and that in fact the bill did pass and allow municipal governments to do that. Municipal governments, Mr. Chairman, asked for a number of bylaw amendments over time, and I will tell you, Mr. Chairman, this was one of the most important ones that came forward. It was, in fact, modeled after, I believe, the CBRM, the Cape Breton Regional Municipalities total ban on smoking bylaws that they put forward. And as a result of that, the Halifax Municipal Council felt the same way. And they felt there was an obligation by the municipal government to protect those people in the workplace, and that they knew that smoking was certainly a health hazard. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if the government has any studies or reports that indicate that secondhand smoking is not a health hazard, and therefore that is the reason why they're willing to protect the interests of the Halifax Casino Corporation. But I do know that there was references made to the Minister of Health Promotion having an obligation. Particularly, that Minister of Health Promotion is the one who promotes the cessation of smoking and offers the brochures and programs to those individuals in the health field whom in fact are moving away from addiction programs. And this in itself, smoking is an addiction, and it's an addiction that needs to be addressed. And if the Minister of Health Promotion is truly interested in making sure that this issue is one of those issues that will in fact be addressed by his government, then he will obviously take the opportunity to speak on this piece of legislation and indicate why he may be supporting this piece of legislation when the vote comes forward. Also, I believe it's the responsibility of the Minister of Health as well, Mr. Chairman, to make sure that Nova Scotians, as well as the Minister of Environment and Labor, to make sure that Nova Scotians have a safe workplace in which to work. And I can tell you, Mr. Chairman, that many of us have probably being smokers before, and we gave up smoking for very good reasons. I, for one, was one of those individuals who gave up smoking some 17 years ago. And I gave it up purely because there were absolutely no benefits in smoking cigarettes, and certainly was there were more there was a greater potential for one's health to deteriorate as a result of smoking. And when one looks at that kind of legislation, Mr. Chairman, you don't look at the legislation as just simply a piece of legislation that's off there in the distance with no substantive meaning for it to be there. It's substantive because, in fact, it's there for the importance and the health and well-being of individuals. And I do know that, Mr. Chairman, there was just this weekend, if many of us were watching the news, we would have seen that one of Canada's former models by the name of Ms. Tarbox, in fact, died as a result and she directly attributed that to her smoking and smoking of cigarettes, died of lung cancer as a result of those smoking. And she's certainly been an advocate for anti-smoking legislation across the province. She has spoke to numerous high schools across the country, Mr. Chairman. She has spoken to many high schools across the country, as well as to advocacy groups, whom in fact are opposed to smoking in public places as well. We also been alerted and been aware, and I know that every caucus has met with an individual by the name of Heather Crow, who was employed in the hospitality industry by being a waitress in a hotel in Ottawa. That individual, after 30-some years in the industry, has contacted cancer, and it was directly attributed to secondhand smoke because that individual never smoked one single day in her life. Nor did members of her family smoke at that particular time. So the only way that she could have gotten lung cancer was a result of secondhand smoke. So Mr. Chairman, the evidence was quite clear, and it was there. And as a matter of fact, it was supported by her application to the Ontario Workers' Compensation Board. So there's substantial evidence, Mr. Chairman, with respect to the causes of secondhand smoke on one's health. There was the Andrea Skinner case, which in fact most recently was a testament in Nova Scotia, whereby this individual made application to Employment Insurance Canada for benefits because she had felt that smoking in her workplace was in fact a danger to her health. And that, in fact, Mr. Chairman, was upheld by Employment Insurance Canada. And there are those individuals, Mr. Chairman, who will say that the workplace, the kind of workplace you're going to seek employment, and therefore you could have prevented this by not taking employment in that workplace. I think that for attitudes of those sorts is somewhat unfair and very unkind to individuals who have limited opportunities for employment. Nova Scotia's population is less than 1 million people, and the businesses out there aren't that varied that you can go out and seek an employment opportunity anywhere you want. And I think when someone takes on a career, they take on a career because they like it, and many people like being involved in in the public domain, particularly where they meet a number of citizens in public. And what would happen, Mr. Chairman, is by bringing this amendment to the legislature, and if the government in fact supported this amendment, then what we would be saying is that yes, we believe that everyone who works in a public place ought to be protected, and they ought to be protected against their public health and safety. Ought to be protected for their public health and safety, Mr. Chairman. And I think that that's very important. It at least sets a tone and a direction of where this government believes its priorities ought to be. I don't believe that this clause within the financial measures bill does anything to protect anyone You know, even the government who may say that it has a huge investment in the casino and that it needs to protect its interest in the casino. Surely the government could have recognized that when the day come that it didn't need to introduce that legislation now, but when the day come, the government could have introduced legislation. Governments consistently introduce legislation that's retroactive, that's fitting for the time, and it did not have to be a piece of legislation that would have to be encompassed within the Financial Measures Act. And I think that what this government has done by doing that, in a sense, Mr. Chairman, is that it has said that, look, we're here to protect our interest. And by protecting their own interest, they're not protecting the interests of Nova Scotians, which is first and foremost, because interests of Nova Scotians who work in workplaces ought to be protected. The only way government does that is by making sure that it has legislation that, in fact, will protect those individuals. It's much like the amendment to the to the workers' compensation legislation with respect to firefighters. We're going to protect those firefighters, and we're going to make sure that those firefighters who are eligible for workers' compensation will be entitled to it under that firefighters legislation. And that's a public health and safety issue in the workplace. We make sure that individuals who in fact work in the mines, are fitted with proper equipment and so on and so forth, so that they won't, they have a less likely chance of contacting what was known as black lung disease. So we make sure that protection in the workplace is there. This is another piece of legislation that says we ought to be protecting people in the workplace, Mr. Chairman. And the way that we do that is simply by making sure that the government votes on this amendment in the affirmative, so that this amendment then becomes a part of the law that allows individuals to make sure that their health and safety is paramount. There has been much talk about those individuals out there in the hospitality industry not getting a fair shake on this piece of legislation, that it exempts the casino from competing in the same marketplace that they're competing in for the same clientele. Much has been said about that, and I'm sure that those 31 MLAs over there who support small business and who have businesses which are actively involved in the hospitality industry will tell them that this is an unfair advantage to the casino operators. I'm not so sure, Mr. Chairman, that it generates more dollars for the government, but it just shifts the dollars around. What would happen is that the casino would, in fact, generate more money, but it would be a detriment to the other public hospitality businesses that are out there. When you look at the Legions, when you look at private clubs, when you look at pubs, taverns, bars, a number of people a number of businesses and nonprofit and charitable organizations that must comply with the legislation. It certainly signals that there is two levels of support here by government, and government supports the big business part, which says that we will not do anything to affect the interests of the casino operation, but we will introduce legislation that affects those small business operators. And this has consistently been a sore spot with respect to the small business operators. And I must say, the small business operators that came to my office certainly talked about the unfair advantage that it would provide to the casino operation, and their businesses were in the Dartmouth side of the harbor, and would mean that the people would just simply take the ferry and go across, and they would spend their dollars at the casino and on the Halifax side of the harbor rather than on the Dartmouth side. And I can tell you that I represent a constituency that has a large number of small businesses, particularly businesses that are directly related to the hospitality industry. small hotels, motels, pubs, bars, taverns, private clubs. I can name a number of private clubs right off the top, Mr. Speaker, but in the event of missing one, I certainly wouldn't want to do that. And there are a number of private clubs in themselves, Mr. Speaker, that I should say, Mr. Chairman, that in fact have expressed concern about this piece of legislation. And when one looks at the surface of this piece of legislation, Mr. Chairman, you have to be in sympathy with them. Government's supposed to create an environment, or should be creating an environment, where there is a level playing field, or there appears to be, or should seem to be, a level playing field. And the way that you introduce legislation, as I have said earlier on the financial measures bill, Bill 36, is that you, as a government, tend to make sure that everyone is a benefactor of legislation that passes through this legislative assembly. And I have to tell you, Mr. Chairman, that that's exactly what those people in the hospitality industry, particularly in the small business side of the hospitality industry, have said to me. And I'm sure that this government, Mr. Chairman, has obviously heard from those individuals. There are 31 MLAs on the government side who are representing 31 constituencies, and many of them whom in fact have people employed in the hospitality industry, as well as business owners in the hospitality industry. And I'm sure, Mr. Chairman, that I will be one who will be standing here awaiting and listening for their responses with respect to this amendment that my honorable colleague has put forward. And if in fact they don't speak to the amendment, we will certainly watch how they vote on this amendment, if in fact when there comes a call for a vote on this amendment. I can tell you that I certainly will be watching intently, because I'm sure the member for Dartmouth South, Mr. Chairman, of all members, knows a number of small businesses in downtown Dartmouth who are directly their business is directly involved in the hospitality industry, and know full well that there will be a decline in business as a result of just hopping on the ferry and going across to the Halifax side to gamble at the casino, if in fact smoking is allowed there. Now, you have to applaud municipal government for making the decision. The government could have previously put this forward through their own legislation, and the ban on smoking in public places some year and a half ago. But government chose not to do that. Instead, Mr. Chairman, it chose to put the municipalities in a situation whereby they would have to address this issue. And many of the municipalities took up the banner, and they certainly said that yes, they would. And I do not know, I forget the district in which the councillor represents, but I will mention the councillor by name, Councillor Bob Harvey, who actually brought this piece of legislation through the Halifax Regional Municipality. He's obviously been out there, and he's obviously consulted with the public out there, and he's obviously been very much aware of well, Mr. Chairman, I won't go there, but he certainly, as a Halifax Regional Councillor, certainly listened to his constituency, and listened to many of those individuals who brought presentations before the HRM, and he listened to those individual presentations, and he heard them from the Nova Scotia Cancer Society. He heard those presentations from the Canadian Cancer Society. He heard those presentations from the advocacy groups seeking a total ban on smoking in public places, and he certainly listened to those individuals with respect to that. Much the same as my colleagues, whom in fact are represented in the provincial legislature. The honourable member for Halifax Needham, who is a health critic, certainly dealt with this issue some year and a half ago, when in fact there was a ban on smoking in public places, the legislation that the government brought forward. That member from Halifax Needham indicated full well that there should be a total ban
You're right, Jerry.
on smoking in public places.
You're right, Jerry. You're right.
And Mr. Chairman, she consistently brought forward to this government, both from the Canadian Cancer Association and the Nova Scotia Cancer Association and the medical experts, evidence with respect to this issue, far better than, and she presented that information to this provincial legislature far better than I can articulate. As critic of our health group, she certainly had access to that information and certainly brought it forward. And as an MLA, I, like most everyone else, try to make sure that we're attuned and up with the legislation and up to date with respect to the issues of Nova Scotians. And that's why if it's a piece of legislation on the government side that is good for Nova Scotians, our party's open and receptive to supporting that piece of legislation. And when we make amendments to legislation, hopefully the government's open and supportive to listening to those amendments. And hopefully the government sees the error of their ways, and that they are, in fact, prepared to